So you're calling to order
Yes, I am.
at 7:33. Okay, and we have present members of the Community Preservation, Tim Wheeler and Elaine Wickstrom. So you want to get started?
Can you
Yes,
promote them?
please.
Oh wait, do I promote the panelist? I see. Sorry guys.
It's all right.
There we go. All right, let's try this again.
I think they have to realize they have to promote themselves. There you go.
Okay. Wow.
They have to be self-promoting, do they? All right. So, sorry, I was just trying to pull up on my phone. Our discussion points. So what did we want? We wanted them to discuss, well, this was CPA discussing items that were on the that were coming up for annual meeting or for budget. I forget. Budget, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, for the budget.
We were looking at multiple groups because this impacted different groups, right?
Yeah. So,
I don't remember what we had specifically though.
I think that the specific thing was just, I mean, obviously, Finance Committee will have to approve or be voting on their articles when they do have them. I know that they don't have their set articles at this time. They can discuss about what things that they are, has been, it looks like they've had two proposals come to them from the Conservation Commission and I guess it's from Agricultural Commission to Recreation. So I don't know if there's anything you want to discuss on those.
So can you hear me?
yes, I
Yes.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so in essence, I assume that what the Community Preservation Act Committee's role in this process is to inform you of our intent to act in a certain way and propose certain
Mhm.
articles for the town meeting to utilize CPA funds, which are running independent essentially of the budget, the way I look at it. So our role is to inform you. Those funds can't be expended without the committee's approval and recommendation to the town meeting.
Mhm.
Those funds can only be used for those purposes, and those funds remain in a fund balance if they're not expended to be used in later years. So right now, I think I could tell you that in fiscal 22, we generated $281,250 through the fee, the 3% fee. And in this year, as a result of the state modifying the way in which it generates funding, they generated more funds than they have in past years for quite a while. And Berlin was one of 14 towns that got 100% match. So the state delivered to us 200 and wherever my number is, 281,250. So we've got 562,500 available. Now, at the town meeting in November, we utilized, I think, a little more than 31,000 out of fiscal 22's funds.
Mhm.
So, I mean, June and I will work on this to confirm it, but my sense right now is that there's about 531,000 left from fiscal 22 that we would propose to utilize in fiscal year 23. The committee is intent on trying to delay by a year the use of the funds. So any funds that we generate in fiscal 22, our intention anyway is to expend those in the next fiscal year. Part of that is that we haven't on our own collected all those funds, and part of that is that it's only through anticipated revenue from the state that we're able to generate a figure.
Mhm.
So we think it's sounder to expend funds that really are in hand rather than anticipated. And June will chime in if I'm messing this up significantly, but I think that's the way we're trying to accomplish this. So if that were the case, somewhere around $56,000 would be, well, actually it'd be about $53,000 would be available for historic preservation, 53,000 would be available for housing, and 53,000 would be available for conservation and recreation. That's automatic. And in the case of recreation and conservation and historic preservation, they've expended all the money that they had available to them from preceding years. So that coffer for them is empty. All they'd have automatically anyway is the 53,000. The housing partnership,
Mhm.
or the housing fund anyway, has accumulated somewhere around, I think it's probably 77,000 that's there, and that we'll add this 53, so they'll be up over 100, you know, they'll be what, $130,000. But there's no vehicle right now to utilize those funds in a creative way. So I can talk a little bit about some of the thoughts that are going on in that realm. And then the remainder of the funds, the 70%, 5% of that'll go to administration for the committee. And the committee has met and drafted a job description for an administrative assistant, essentially. And we've gone to personnel committee and had that scrutinized, and we'll polish that up one more time and get their approval, and that'll go to the selectmen for their approval. And the anticipated role would be to help with oversight, because there's procurement involved, there's for a lot of these projects, and the committee has to be accounting for the way in which the money is utilized and expended, and then we have to report that to the state. So a number of towns around have utilized that, a portion of the 5% anyway, in order to bring in the type of administrative help that, you know, it can work with those issues like procurement and reports and taking in applications and working on issues with the website and dealing with correspondence and stuff. So
Tim, when you're talking about that 5%, are you talking about a task that a town employee takes on additionally, or is this a specialized, like, is somebody that has to get hired for X number of hours, or?
if a town employee wanted to apply because they had the time and through the selection process they were chosen, there wouldn't be any reason why they couldn't serve in that role. But it's going to be a broader net that we'll probably cast, because the procurement part may not be a skill set that someone that's already with us has. That one of the things that we've stipulated is that they become certified to deal with procurement certified in the eyes of the state. I guess there's a process you go through. So we've asked that any applicant be prepared to go through that process and become certified within 6 months of taking on the role. And right now, we talked less than 10 hours a week. And sometimes the weekly load would be less, and sometimes when we're taking in applications and putting together our budget and stuff like that, or oversight of some project, the time might be more than 10, but in essence, it would balance out to somewhere around 8 or 10.
Okay. And you need to have a warrant article to get that approved, or is that already part of the formation of your committee?
CPA can go ahead and work with the selectmen, is my understanding, and we can expend those funds
Okay.
out of our budget.
Tim, just to put this a little different way, any employee costs connected with CPA, directly with CPA, are outside of the town's operating budget. That it's
Right.
that
Mhm.
separate fund. So we're only in some kind of, as the finance committee, we're only in some kind of, I don't know, advice or recommendation or that kind of
Mhm.
capacity. It's not part of what we take that hard look at and say to the town, yeah, we recommend, or I don't know, is it contemplated? The CPA committee that FinCom would get up and have a recommendation in any way at town meeting?
Well, you've recommended in the past articles on, support for those articles that expended money for the Bullard House or for the purchase of the land on Lyman and Linden and stuff. And so I think the important ingredient is that if we're meeting with you and explaining to you what we anticipate for projects in the coming, well, I mean, in this case, we can predict to some degree what'll be on the Maytown meeting warrant. We'll also have a round of applications that are available for people to pick up on for a November town meeting. And a couple of us have recommended that the town look more seriously at having 2 town meetings a year and stop the whole process of not knowing for sure whether there's going to be one in the fall. And why don't we just finally grow up to the point where we pick a date, agree the fact that it's going to be 2 meetings a year, and then we can really cycle a lot of these projects through that type of schedule. So, because the CPA is basically got a 2 application two times during the year that we'd really like to be able to go to a town meeting and get support. So rather than doing just 1, we'd rather it be 2.
What do you need to have? I'm very relatively new to the process. What do you need to have a second town meeting? Is that another, does the select board just say, okay, we're just gonna have one, or do you need?
I don't think that the town, I mean, maybe the town would have to take action and vote to make it an automatic process rather than driven solely by the selectmen calling the meeting. I mean, they basically call the meetings now, but it's understood that there's going to be an annual, and there has to be, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's not understood that there would be a second town meeting in the fall. And I think that we're complex enough town now, and we've seen a need to have a second town meeting in the fall most years. So why not just make it automatic? And so we're all able to predict it. If the planning board has articles that it feels aren't ready for town meeting in May, we don't have to say, rush it, put it in the warrant half-baked, hope that we haven't made too many mistakes. I mean, we'd be much better off if we were in a situation where we could say, it's not ready, but in 6 months, we're going to have another town meeting, we'll do it then. And CPA certainly wants to have, two opportunities on an annual basis. So I think there'd be a number of other committees. We always seem to be transferring money. I would think it would help you guys if you
I was
knew
just gonna
that-
say that. I am not a fan of having to, but I think you're absolutely right that a lot of the articles we've seen are like placeholders or rushed, and then it's a decision, oh, do we try for it? And then people don't have all the information, and then things get voted down. We all know that that has happened when we didn't have all the appropriate information. Very valid, Tim. I'm just sitting here shaking my head in agreement.
I think you also have, like, if somebody does run into a problem trying to get something to the one meeting, instead of having to wait a year, you would have enough time to get things, all your ducks in a row, essentially,
Right.
and make a better presentation. But as I said, I'm not sure what the mechanism is to make that an automatic process.
Well, I've been chatting with people, so I think if other people chat, and I think if the finance committee felt that there was value in that, the selectmen would certainly listen. And if you felt that from a adjustment to, some of the funding that you've got we always seem to be maneuvering things around in the fall. So if it would help you, I think if you were to speak up, it might help as well.
I mean, some other examples have, especially like on capital planning areas, like for example, the past year we had the loader issue.
Right.
So when some of these large ticket unexpected things come up, can result in some creative thinking for when you have to figure out a solution before the next 9 months before a town meeting. So there's definitely other areas where it would definitely have value.
So the committee meets next week. We may very well see a few more projects. Right now, there's the two that we sent you, the one for conservation, looking for additional funds to purchase the Lyman. I guess we're going to call it the McGrail piece, I think is what they talked about. And then the other is coming out of the Agricultural Commission to deal with a fence down there at the community garden. There may be others. I'm not sure. Another item that I'll throw on the table is that the planning board and the housing partnership are working with Central Mass Regional Planning right now to update the housing production plan. And we are theoretically supposed to do that every 5 years. We submit that to the state. And if we're a community with less than 10% of our housing that's affordable, it's a fairly significant thing to have on board because it helps protect you in certain ways from 40Bs that you don't want to entertain. Because we're at 15%, we don't necessarily have to work on the new plan, but because there's this CPA money for housing and there's no easy way to spend it, what we were looking for, the planning board often went to the Regional Planning Commission and said, can you help us find a way to expend some of the money that's being held by the housing partnership for housing? We need sort of a communal housing trust amongst a number of towns. And that didn't come to fruition. Now, in July last year, we joined the Assabet Assabet Regional Housing Consortium. And they're going to help us oversee the subsidized housing inventory that we have to keep track of to make sure we're staying above 10%. But they're also going to help us investigate ways in which we might be able to utilize some of the CPA money and some of the mitigation money that's come to housing over the years. Because I think, what's Eloise got, June? $400,000 or something like that, probably. And then in addition, she's got CPA money now too. So there's a significant amount of money built up, but there's no way to spend it. So we're considering putting an article on the warrant to create a housing trust. And because we're working with Central Mass right now to update the housing production plan, and we've got the CPA money, and we've joined this collaborative, we think that these issues are converging and giving us an opportunity now to really make a trust supported financially and then able to utilize that money to help us maintain the affordable units we've got, so we don't slip below the 10% figure again, which I think the planning board's view would be catastrophic, because it would open up the door again to 40Bs that we don't want, instead of just bringing on affordable units that we really choose to have. So the Mass Housing Partnership right now we had to file an application today, actually. They're offering to work with a couple towns in the Commonwealth on the development of a housing trust. So because we've got these three elements, the money, the plan, and the Assabet Consortium working with us, we thought we'd apply for that. So there may very well be an article on the warrant to create this trust. And there may very well, and the CPA committee is going to have to talk about this, there may be an article that will put on the warrant to expend some of the housing money to help support the development of that trust. Hudson, when they work their CPA funds, they take all the money that goes to housing and vote at town meeting to turn it over to the trust. And then the trust expends it independent of the Community Preservation Committee. And I think that the committee is going to have to talk about this, but that may very well be the model that we want to use here in town. But that would create this new entity that would have some control over some significant money on an annual basis, just like the Conservation Commission and the Historical Commission and stuff. But I thought it's probably important for you guys to understand that that's something that might be coming about in the future.
What do you think the advantages to that are, Tim?
The trust, the housing partnership really can't spend
Well,
any
I mean,
money. So if you wanted to, let's say, put in a program where you were going to give rental assistance to low-income families so they could afford the rent, or you wanted to help first-time home buyers with a program where you could help them with some part of the down payment so they could get into a house that they might not be able to afford otherwise. Or you want to create some additional affordable housing. Maybe you want to work with Habitat for Humanity and take a piece of town-owned land that's not controlled by the Conservation Commission, but just in the hands of the town, but that's a parcel that would be ideal for an affordable unit. You could expend those monies, and the trust would be the entity that would work on that. And the trust would also work with the consortium, the Assabet Consortium, in terms of maintaining the subsidized housing inventory to make sure that the people that are in those affordable units, are qualified, and that when they go to sell that unit, it remains as an affordable unit. We've lost several, as you know. We lost a couple up at Sawyer Hill LLC, and we lost one on at Whitney, what was it, Alden Drive there down on the end of Pleasant Street. And we lost them because the seller couldn't find a qualified buyer in the case of the Alden site. And what that meant is it reverted back to a market rate unit, and we lost it off of the SHI. So that's nuts. I mean, we're working too hard to get to the 10% so we can control where projects are built in town through zoning. And if we slip below, we're just back in hot water again. So that trust would be able to buy that unit, perhaps, instead of letting it go to market rate, rent it for a period of time, and then very well flip it and sell it back as an affordable unit at some time when they could find a qualified buyer. So all those options are available when you've got the trust, but they aren't there if you don't have it. So that's why we're looking at that pretty seriously.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we first started looking into this CPA, I remember reading an article, and I want to say it might have been Southampton, that actually created similar this, but it was to allow seniors in your home, your town, to make adjustments to their living by putting in like ramps or handicapped accessible to stay in their housing. I think it was Northampton, and I really think it was like, I think they set up something, and it was for seniors in the town to make those improvements to their home, and it was through CPA funding, which I think we have a lot of seniors in town that may actually be, I'm just trying to, there's a lot of money to be spent, and I'm not, I mean, those little projects are a piddly, but for a senior citizen on a fixed income, you know, throwing 10 grand here or there, I'm just thinking out loud, but I thought I remember them thinking outside the box, similar to this, and it was used
Yeah.
for senior housing.
No, I mean, clearly, you know, aging in place is more and more important all the time. So
Mhm.
again, I think you're right. It's probably a project that something like the Housing Trust could work on. So those seniors that met certain income levels could perhaps gain some of that support that would offer them the chance to stay in their homes longer. So, yep.
And Tim, that trust is envisioned as a group of towns, not as a single trust for Berlin, or is it?
It would be a single trust for Berlin.
Okay.
When we joined the consortium, we said to them, so who in the consortium, which is, I think, eight or nine towns now, we said, who doesn't have a trust? And they said, you. So, you know, Harvard does, Boxborough does, Bolton does, I mean, everybody does, Hudson. And, you know, it's, you know, you sort of scratch your head and say, oh, okay, so we have to do this. And, you know, I guess we do. We have the money, we have the support from Assabet. Assabet's costing us, I think, what would we spend this year? 12. I think we put aside 12. We're not going to spend 12,000 for the consortium support and oversight. And that, you know, that's an opportunity that I think we should continue to look at as a means of effectively utilizing the money and really helping a hell of a lot of people, and keeping the town sort of that good mix of, you know, blue collar, you know, folks that have lived here all their lives that you want to continue to have living here, that sort of thing. So I think the trust would help with that.
Just thinking here, Tim, on the McGrail property, that's in the recreation conservation category. Is there an opportunity there with respect to a building lot or two building lots to move a piece of that into the affordable housing category of CPA? If you could put that together, if a proposal came in to do that, is there a, you know, sell a building lot aspect to that proposed acquisition by, you know, for conservation?
What you might find is that the CPA money that's in housing perhaps gets utilized to drop the selling price of that lot. So it, you know, I think it may be more difficult with that parcel, simply because the objective of selling a couple lots is to maximize the value of those to the degree that you can, and reduce the impact on the town in terms of the amount of money we have to pull out of our own pocket. And if we try to figure out a strategy to reduce the cost of the lot significantly, so it becomes a more affordable parcel for an affordable house, that may compromise that other part of the effort.
But could you flip that and say you would put maybe like townhouse, you know, a couple of townhouses, like if you're making it more affordable, getting a couple more. Normally when people are buying those lots, you want a larger house and a lot of space. But if you're working more towards the goal of affordable, I mean, because I do live at Sawyer Hill, and that was like our approach was we have all the houses in one section and then lots of conservation land. So the housing takes up less than half of
I mean,
the land.
I think the thing about the McGrail parcel is the objective of the Conservation Commission is to maximize the amount of open space they can protect. But I mean, there are pieces that we took in tax title. I mean, there's the 3 parcels that are on Baker Road. I don't know if those would perk, but might very well be able to join those together and create a single lot where a single family unit could be built. And you'd be able to come in at a much more affordable price range. So,
Yeah,
who knows, we're sort of exploring ideas that I think the trust down the road would probably play with more than the Community Preservation Act committee would.
Tim, let me shift that question I asked a little bit, which wasn't, I didn't intend the answer that you gave. It was more along Julie's line, which is, well, my thought is if a lot or 1 or more lots were purchased at market rate to assist the conservation action and then developed as affordable housing, a clustered sort of way. Is that something that might help with the overall view of that property, that area?
I think you and I have had a conversation in the past. The planning board right now is trying to figure out a strategy to develop an overlay, I guess we'd call it, that would provide for what we'd call workforce housing, so that you'd end up in a situation where the costs could be reduced enough by multiplying the number of units on the parcel so that you could get that economy of scale, so you could get some affordable units out of the project. We don't have that in place, and that's one of the things that we thought we could chat with the Mass Housing Partnership if we get this opportunity to work with them through this application we just filled out. And it will certainly be part of the conversation as part of the housing production plan that we're going to work on with the Regional Planning Commission, because that's going to take place over the course of the next year. And that'll involve a lot of community forums and stuff. So we'll begin to try to get community input as to how folks feel about that workforce housing component, and then draft that up so we can bring it to a town meeting. But we're not finding the right language and the right model in other communities. We've seen what Concord and Carlisle and Devons have done with that type of housing, but we can't transfer their language to ours easily yet, because they have infrastructure in most cases where they have water and sewage available and we don't. So that complicates the way in which we draft this language up in terms of the size of the lot that would be necessary and units and stuff. So, I think there's a convergence of enough minds that are going to help us move this forward. But I don't think it's quick enough to perhaps solve the problem of acquiring the McGrail piece, particularly if they have to act on that in the next, 90 days or something. Well,
You have to unmute.
pardon?
June is raising her hand, but
Oh,
Is this the property that we just purchased, well, that we're trying to purchase using CPA funds?
yeah.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that, because if you sell any part of that property, the money has to go back to CPA. So that's just one of those things that you can't per se, yeah.
We love it.
So yeah, so in that case, you would want to try to maximize and get the most for your bang for your buck. And I don't mean that to sound that way, but I mean, that's, if you want the money to go back in and be able to spend it elsewhere, you're going to want to get for twofold. One, less money coming out for conservation and more money back to respend, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Janet, that I fully accept that. And I was just trying to clarify with Tim that was where I was going with my question, that you maximize the purchase of a lot within that transaction, but then with the lot, then do the affordable housing piece, where there might be on a project with the affordable housing at that point, because I'm looking for the money that's sitting in that third bucket in the CPA that we don't have projects. I'm looking to create a project, and I'm asking, is it possible to do it in conjunction with what we've already started at McGrail?
I mean, we
Is
can
it- it's
certainly have
not-
that conversation. I think as June points out, there's that complexity, that wrinkle that you have to address at the same time. So,
But,
Um,
but it's a good wrinkle, isn't it?
yeah,
Would
I
be.
mean, what it would mean is
Absolutely.
that CPA would expend more money than they're being asked to spend, with the notion that they would then get the money back. Which
Is it McGrail or Lore? You're confusing me by that whole.
it's lore, but I think conservation's going to refer to it as McGrail.
It's the, yeah, it's the same.
Well, I
same
know, but
property.
is it one and the same, or are there two different lots?
No,
Because
it's the
that's
same.
confusing.
No,
There's
it's the
three
same
parcels, I
property.
think.
Right, it's 3 parcels, but.
Yeah, that's
but-
why I wasn't sure either, Janet.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure.
I'm sorry, but I think we need to like stick to one name, because that's gonna totally confuse people.
It's
So which-
McGrail.
McGrail, there you go.
Those of us that have been in town for more than 50 years, it's McGrail.
Right.
But
So,
people that have.
sorry. To further clarify, my idea was to have a lot purchased with private money and developed with affordable housing money through CPA.
Yeah, and I think
Okay, that,
unfortunately, we're not ready yet
yeah,
on this piece, but maybe it can cycle around later. I know, who knows?
mhm,
We have a little time to keep thinking about this anyway.
it's an early seed, Tim. It's not even spring yet. I'm just
That's
planting a
right.
very early seed.
All right.
Any
Do we have
thoughts,
anything
Elaine?
else for?
With the McGrail property, I think the conservation people aren't allowed to sell land. That I think the deal was the Sudbury Valley trustees would be the ones to sell a piece to try to defray what they're going to put into it. So I
Yeah.
think we're stuck at the moment with that property. You know, the way it's going.
Understood.
But we did talk about helping seniors stay in their homes at one of our CPAC meetings quite a while back. So we are taking a lot of different things into consideration.
What else can we tell you?
Is that the only thing that's been brought up, is the Lore McGrail conservation monies? And what, I don't have I forgot
The-
my laptop
the-
at work,
the
which has
fence-
all my
the-
paperwork in it.
The fencing at the community garden.
The fence.
Oh, that's right.
There may be one more from the historical for the Bullet House. We're working on it. It's not going to be much of the pie left.
Well, there's 50,000 anyway, so.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some addition. I mean, there'll be other money in addition to that, because conservation's not going for that full chunk anyway, so. So that's the news. We're getting our feet on the ground. I mean, this is our first time really talking to you guys, which is good. This is an important, part of the process, and it's going to help us define some of the ways in which we anticipate the use of the funds, obviously. But it's just, we've only had that one special town meeting where we've expended any of the money. So, it's a new enterprise. And June is helping us by holding our hand each step of the way.
You've been very kind.
She's good like
Yeah,
that.
she's
We're
very.
learning as
very
we're
kind.
going.
One of the things we're trying to do with the Bullard House money we have in hand that was approved at the last town meeting is perhaps a matching grant from the state, the Mass Historical. But there's a lot of work involved in that, and we aren't going to be able to do it on this round. But we're planning on trying to do it for the next round.
Yeah.
So there are other things that we're working on.
I'm sorry, Lynn, I wasn't understanding. Do you need to go to the town for approval to apply for the grant?
No.
The matching grant, or it's just the process of getting it done?
It's a long process. Yeah, and there's a lot of pieces to the pie.
Mhm. Okay.
So
I like the
Janet
idea.
has her hand up.
Yeah, I like the idea of not spending the money we think we're gonna have rather than spending the money we have, because I think sometimes we can get carried away with saying, oh,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
gonna get, and then it's not there and it doesn't get matched at the full 100 and now we're short. So I do like that you're being conservative in that way.
Well, I think June would whack us if we didn't do it that way.
Oh, I do have to say though, is that you have to, if you're going to spend the money that's going to be coming in, you have to do that before we set the recap sheet. So that would have to be at an annual.
Yeah.
If you go to a fall meeting, you can only spend the amount that you appropriate at the annual into that special reserve, I think, for those.
Right. Yeah, so you move it out of the pool and put it into that reserve account that allow, yeah, so,
Because you can't spend that after the recap sheet is done, so
Right.
it would have to be. But again, you guys are just recommending funding. It's like an extra funding source. It still does have to go to town meeting to be appropriated. And that's why I think that the finance committee weighs in on it, is because they actually, town meeting has the final, on whether or not the money is actually appropriated and spent.
and that's the beauty of the way this whole thing flows in my mind, because it's ultimately, even though these entities have the right to have access to the funds, they can't expend it until the town approves it. So no committee can go off half-cocked and build pie in the sky castles and stuff. So it's a good process. It's really well thought out. And if you go on there's the Community Preservation Consortium's website, and there's a couple staff people in Boston that are running this. And if you look at the projects, it'll give you an idea. It lists, you can choose projects by category, by town, and by year, and it'll list hundreds and hundreds of projects that are, perhaps just dedicated to historic preservation, so it really gives you an idea, a big menu of possible activities that the town could get involved in. And that's particularly with the housing one, where we're so unfamiliar with the options that are available to us. I've been looking at that a couple times and I thought, wow, people are being pretty creative. So it's exciting. Good for the town.
I found that article that had Southampton, so I sent it to everybody, except I didn't know if your address was still Tim at Indian Head Farm, so I didn't send it to you.
You can send it to TH Wheeler at Indian Head Farm. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know if you were still using the Indian Head Farm with the name change.
Undercover we are, yeah.
Well, I sent it to June and them, but I'll try to find it again.
I can always forward it to them too.
Good. All set?
Indeed. You guys all good?
Well, hopefully, unfortunately, I think we're probably one of the easier conversations you end up having in this process. So, thank you. And we're happy to come and entertain you anytime. But now you got your work cut out for you with the rest of it.
You're always entertaining.
Yeah.
You're always entertaining.
Okay, Doc. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
June, I can't find it again in my address book, so if you'll just send it to Tim.
That's okay. Yeah, I'll forward it.
June, did I screw you up, or did you fall
You
off? and
didn't,
get
for
back?
whatever reason, all of a sudden my computer started to restart.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so it bounced me right out.
Okay. I did send out
So-
minutes.
I was going to say, I think we should address the minute.
Can we just make a motion? Can I make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted in draft today?
Certainly can.
Was
I'll
that a
second.
Yep.
Do we need any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Stan, aye.
Mary, I.
Oh, sorry.
Jan and I. Did I go out of order? Sorry.
I went out of order. Sorry.
I thought Stan was first, but that's all right.
I did go first.
He
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
I didn't
All
hear
right,
you.
Scott, I.
I did Julie I. So did we get everyone?
Well, looking at our schedule, we had a whole bunch of people on for tonight. Do we not have, did that change?
Well, the way it went out is it just said CPA and then in Margaret's last email, and then said that these other committees that use CPA money can choose to attend, but none of them
Okay.
were directly invited. So that's why it looked like we had a big meeting.
Yeah, but Julie,
Okay.
our meeting schedule has a whole bunch of veteran services boards and committees if needed.
Yeah, that-
Agricultural, cemetery, conservation, cultural council, historical, personnel planning, recreation, ZBA. They're all on the list for tonight. I don't know.
That's what I was
Um,
looking at.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
well,
funny
that was,
because on the, oh, that's on the website.
yeah, that was what Margaret asked last meeting was going over. It was what ones that we wanted to attend. Next, I had mentioned, having the community preservation committee to attend. But I don't think we had anybody, we didn't suggest any of the others, because usually those, either they don't have any fundings that they come to us for.
Yeah,
But if there is something that we wish that was still to talk to, I mean, we can definitely schedule them sometime later.
Well, okay, yeah, because looking at tonight's meeting on the website, it just mentioned Community Preservation Committee. The other thing that's coming up is last year Conservation came to us because they needed a conservation agent.
Yep.
They hired one. And I guess they're paying them out of a different account and now so it looks
Currently
like they
paying them out of wetlands and partially out of open space, depending on what project she's working on.
okay. So now they're asking to move that. So their budget looks like it has its giant jump from 0 to what, 18K for payroll. So I didn't know if they wanted to talk about that or.
I would assume you might like to hear the story behind it.
Yeah, I think we would want to hear
Yeah.
that, especially if it's added to their, part-time wages, I'm assuming.
yeah.
Well, they
Well,
didn't have
and
any
if it's going to
part-time
continue,
wages.
right, it's going to be an ongoing thing.
Yeah. Because when we talked to them last year, they didn't even have, they had like a couple of positions they needed. Because they also needed a clerk to do the minutes and the admin. And they needed the conservation agent work. They needed a lot. They need a lot of stuff. And but we never finished that conversation. So I think we
Like
probably
to
should.
add them to February 9th.
Yeah, that probably sounds right, June, because that's a hold night and
Okay.
Historical.
Well, are there any other nights that are relatively light, or should we already
March-
use up one of?
March 2 and February 9 are both holds. So there's no.
No, I
there's
know,
nothing
I just-
listed.
Yeah, I was hoping to keep the actual.
How late would you
Oh.
like to go? You have, like next week, you'll have the inspectoral services at 7:30, Board of Health at 7:45, and then highway and facilities at 8. So I would assume he'll probably go to at least 8:30. Would you want to try to squeeze somebody in at 8:30?
Well, it didn't necessarily have to be next week. I just was wondering if there was if any one of these dates, I was just trying to pull them up, were lighter than, it's only 1 or 2 on one of those nights already.
Oh,
Isn't Assabet is on, what is it, the 9th or the 16th? And
16th.
they're the
Yeah,
only
it's,
ones on that night, right? Am I
As of
correct?
right now.
They're
Yes.
pretty,
And
they
they're
come
pretty
with their,
speedy. Yeah.
yeah, they come with their very efficient packet and they usually have it ahead of time. I'm not sure. I mean, and unfortunately, when it comes to school, there's not, we can nickel and dime them, but most of the time they're pretty efficient. I don't know if you want to try that night. I'm just throwing that out there from past experiences with Assabet. I don't know
Yeah,
if anybody
I
else.
agree,
How long-
Janet. I think we could
How
tack
long-
them on to the 16th.
How long do they normally take, Stan or Janet? Do you remember? Was it half an hour?
And
Yeah, I was gonna say
sometimes,
no more than a
yeah,
half.
no more than a half an hour, especially if we get the information ahead of time. We can plan our questions and they usually have that packet pretty well done. I know the kids work on it and it's a school group effort. I don't know, I'm a little bit out of the Assabet scene now that guys graduated, but they've had already done a lot of building renovations and expenses the last few years. I just was thinking that that's the only thing on that night, if I'm not mistaken.
That's. the
But you
only
are
one.
correct. And
In,
I
to-
think
in
we
Berlin,
should-
Boylston doesn't tend to always be as efficient, so, and I know they've got some
No.
new glitches in this year with the regionalization and student support services. I don't know. I just was throwing it out there. I don't care.
So Stan, we could probably do another one on the 16th. One or
That's what
two
I'm
more.
thinking.
Yeah,
I think we should hold the 9th in case there's just something completely unforeseen that pops
Yeah.
up that we need to meet about rather than schedule, something that we know we're trying to schedule here.
Okay.
And given that there's some open space here.
and Julie, you think we really do want to hear from conservation about what's happening this year and expectations this year and going forward?
I think they should at least be able to explain what they're doing and what they're gonna need. And if, I mean, for what I remember from what John was saying, John Aney, they have a lot that they need. So it would be good just to get the explanation of what the conservation agent's doing. My impression from what he had said was that they need lots of stuff done. Let's stay on top of it. And what the expectation is going to be going forward, hour-wise and cost-wise, because I know they're still testing it out. I guess, June, did they up the hours as well? The number of hours?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I want to say yes, because I know that it was a larger jump.
Okay.
And I know that they were, because currently it looks like they're taking, I don't want to say most of, but a lot of the payroll is coming out of open space, which I know they really don't want to touch that money at this time. So I think that's why they were leaning towards it, and they don't have a lot of money right now in wetlands account. That's not like a reoccurring on a regular basis funding source.
And isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but with even all the CPA money and everything going into place, if they don't get certain matching funds and grants, they still don't have enough money to purchase that property, even with all the CPA money. So they may be coming for us for other additional funds that I think we need to hear about if I understand everything and remember everything correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, Janet, just one big consideration. Sudbury Valley Trustees is in the game on the McGrail acquisition. So
But if-
Sudbury Valley Trustees is carrying a load there with respect to grant money and filling in what we don't do with CPA. So So I don't think that there's an expectation towards the town, but I'd like to hear them on that
Well,
point.
I also think that if we don't follow through, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Sudbury Valley trustee is only for X amount of days. And if all the pieces don't fall into place, it's not necessarily a done deal with that. Am I correct in that? I think I am. June probably can speak to it better than myself.
I didn't know if Mary had more to say.
Just that we need to talk to conservation about the position that, you know, the agent anyway, and so we can raise questions at the time when they come in. And
Well, to be fair to them, then should we just be clear that we want to hear about the agent and their other expected spending? I don't think it should be waiting till they show up to ask them the other questions if we know.
yeah, that's right. And the other big project is the McGrail property. So,
Like, I vaguely remember something about what Janet was talking about too, is that I think we were per se possibly borrowing money
Mhm.
from Sudbury Valley. So I think there may be an interest charge too if we don't come up with the funding. But I only got bits and pieces of it. I didn't get the full story.
And
Okay.
if I remember after talking with you about that, the interest can't come out of CPA.
I don't know the
So
answer to that.
Yeah, I think I asked somebody about that and that's the answer I got. So I agree with Julie, the transparency as to why we're having them come should be brought to their attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to hide anything. Just tell them what we're.
Yeah,
In
but
the
I don't,
agenda.
I just want to make sure that they, like we're
Right,
talking about it
absolutely.
here. I just want them to,
We just need to know everything.
So in regards to the agent then and any other possible funding for purchase of land?
Sure.
And do you want them to come in at 8? Do you want to give Assabet a half an hour? And then have them
And they
come in
won't
at
take
8?
more than a half an hour, but maybe we say 8:15 just to be safe, but I can't, Assabet never takes all that long, but I think we should, I think just to make sure we're not,
Like
I mean,
say 8:15?
yeah, I mean, right. I don't think Assabet's gonna go past 8, but it's kind of just in case. And most people are pretty understanding and will hang out and wait until their turn, but I know Assabet, they'll probably be there early anyway.
Historical and recreation, were those ones you wanted to add in now also, or?
so are we still talking about, what day are we talking about? The 16th?
Yeah.
so did they have? Off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember them having any major changes. in their budget.
Recreation just came in. They just finally submitted their budget just recently, and it was a large increase.
Okay.
But they did not reference at all the revolving fund that they have. And I know Margaret has not yet fully looked at it because, like I said, it had just come in after she had
Okay.
left.
So should we tentatively schedule them if we need to?
Well, we could do, I mean, we could say, we could go back, we could say 8 o'clock for conservation and we could say 8:30 for recreation. I really don't think Assabet's gonna take longer than a half an hour. What do you guys think?
I'm just looking at February 2nd. I mean, there are quite a few people on that night, but town clerk, well, that's not going to take long. Council on Aging, assessors might take a little, an accountant. I don't know. Do those, is that a full night or could we add another small one there? I'm just trying to maximize us.
The accountant's kind of long-winded. I don't know. We
Yeah.
might not be able to.
Depends on the night. Yeah,
And if there's good snacks been baked earlier in the day.
have been delivered.
We're missing out on all the treats from Willie there.
Do you want to pop somebody in there at say 8:30?
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out. I don't know how many more people, but I mean, we still have the 20, we have the week of the 26th if something comes up. Because I don't know, that group seems, I mean, Eloise is fast. Council on Aging, I mean, most of that got hashed over last year, right? As far as
Right.
salaries and all that. Assessors, I don't know, Molly, sometimes, not that she's long-winded, but has a lot to discuss because it's the assessors, but if a small one, you might, I mean, we could talk about it next week.
Didn't Molly already talk to us?
I thought she did. That's why I'm confused. why
She
she's
talked
on it.
about, because she talked about the, she was trying out a different,
Right. I don't know
wasn't
why
a-
she's on there.
yeah.
She came a couple weeks ago, I thought.
Yeah, it was,
We were in person, maybe in November, December.
yeah.
I mean, is that, does she have to come back? I was thinking the same thing. That's why I'm thinking that's gonna be a quicker night, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah,
I
Molly,
feel like she was there with her budget though. Wasn't she there speaking to something else?
Thought it had to do with
No.
was it the mapping or the,
It had something to do with her budget.
Yeah, we did the
I think it was-
budget. It was,
Did
it was
we?
an increase because she was going to use it. She's testing out a different service. She started in January.
Right. I remember that. And didn't she, maybe, I'm thinking maybe she said she had to come back because they were waiting for some numbers to come in that weren't in yet to do something. Am I remembering something wrong there? Oh, I don't know. They all seem to run together with me. I'm sorry. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. We have next week to talk about it, but if something does come up, it seems like we might be able to slide somebody in on February 2nd.
I can check with Molly tomorrow too to see if she was already in.
Well, she was in. That was our first one when we met with the fire chief.
yeah, she
Yeah.
was,
That
She
was
was-
our first in-person
Yeah.
back in December.
Uh-huh.
December 15th, I'm looking at my notes.
Yeah,
she-
I thought she was.
The GIS subscription mapping, and they were gonna run a 6-month test beginning in January, so I don't know whether she needed to come back. But that's 6 months to take it past town meeting, so I think we talked about her budget. That night. So it may just be an oversight that assessors is listed for the 2nd.
So do you want to remove it or do you want me to double check with her to see if it's needed or?
Could you just double check with her?
Yeah, I think we should double.
Check. I think the issue is that in the past, the first night had been fire and police was given extra time. And the assessors said they were ready to go. But yeah, just double check to make sure that.
Oh, Scott, now that you just said it that way, yes, I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, I thought she's already been in, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm losing it.
So maybe it just wasn't taken off of here where she went in with the fire EMS on the 15th, December 15th, maybe?
Probably.
Because that was the same night that the school came in and did their preliminary.
Right.
All right, so do you want to put in recreation then in there at 8 o'clock?
Sure.
But double check with Molly, just in case we're all misremembering. That's my new
Okay.
favorite word. Misremembering.
There's a lot of that for me lately. Over the past 3 years seem to have combined.
Well, when you talk COVID all day, because it's all the same thing. And then you go, oh, did I talk to that parent or did I not talk to that parent? Because it's the same conversation. It's just a different, you wish you could blind CC everybody on one phone call because you're telling them, okay, this is day 0, you're 1 through 5. And I said to one mother, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to confirm dates. And she called me back. She goes, I know just what you're saying. It's just, everything is just so much. So, all right.
No, I'll double check with Molly first and then send out something for recreation for February 2nd. And conservation then will be on February 16th at 8 o'clock.
When we're done with the schedule, I just have one item I wanted to discuss.
I think that's it on the schedule.
Okay, I just want to
ahead.
bring up what it was it 2 weeks ago when we met with police, and one was suggestion that brought up, even Margaret had mentioned it, and just want to know what the opinion is of the the part-time, where they basically placed the the one-time training through the Bridge Academy for the part-time officers. Well, I guess they're covering in their budget this year because of the change in personnel. They got savings there, but the Bridge Academy for next year, and instead of it coming from their part-time wages line item, to have that money come from the Public Safety Special Purpose Stabilization Fund, which was created at the special town meeting, which has over $300,000 in it today. Of course, the one drawback to that, it does require a 2/3 vote at town meeting to take funds from it. But it seems like that's the logical place for something like this, that's one-offs, as opposed to sitting in a, looking like a huge part-time wage increase. And obviously they'll have, I think they said there'll be 4 officers going through it in fiscal year 23, and they anticipate 2 in fiscal year 24.
How much is it per? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I forget what the total, the 4 basically increased. I think they said they put down for 200 hours for each of the officers that would be going through. So, and the result was for 4, it was $21,536.
And is that including just the wages or is that including the class as well?
That was, let's look at this here.
Because I would think the courses should come out of a different line item as like for, continuing education, or, I mean, do they have such a line item or training just to better able to look at where funding is being spent rather than lumping it into wages,
Exactly. That's where, the opinion, or at least my personal opinion, is that it
Yeah.
should not be
I
coming
totally agree.
out of that line item, and that in this specific fund was for something like this.
So that-
And
Yeah, Scott, the chief's letter, December 6th letters specifies that Bridge Academy increased part-time wages by $21,536 to cover the 4 officers. So that 21,000 is just the part-time wages, not any other academy cost, from what his letter seems to indicate.
That's how I read it too. That's why I'm asking. The question is, where is I mean, you've got 4 offices going to a training. I don't know if the training is $5,000 each times 4, that's another 20 grand. Is there, I think that's what Scott and I are asking. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
I don't remember anything listed in there for what it is. I mean, is there actually a cost? I mean, it's something that's being mandated by the state. Is it a case that we're just on the hook for the wages
Oh, yeah.
and there's no, I mean, what, there's a search online because there's stuff on the Bridge Academy online, but I don't know.
So page 7 of their request, Scott, the bottom of the page, there's a bunch of listed items, there's training conferences, dues,
Right.
full-time specialized training 9 at $650. Police Academy fee 1 at 3,000. So I don't see Bridge Academy, but I don't know if it might have another name.
June, do you know?
No, I was just texting the chief to see if he knew.
So Scott,
I
would you?
thought Margaret already said we were gonna take this, we're gonna pull this out and pay with it differently. No?
Scott, would you
Yeah,
propose,
Sorry.
would you propose both the wages and any costs associated with Bridge Academy come from that source that requires the 2/3 vote?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Just looking on here, they have a whole page on it. Eligibility registration requirements.
I'm pretty sure that's what Margaret's thought was to do
Yes.
that. And if I want to almost say that if there was funding available to earmark it for the next 3 years as a special article, so that way there, it was already taken care of and any money that wasn't spent on that would just revert back to.
Right, yeah, that's be a good way to do it too, because they said there'd be 2 officers next year. And right, it would make sense that if you're why don't you just take care of it in one shot?
So that way there, it couldn't get spent somewhere else.
So we could do it with one article, but make it over 2 years. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it was a 3-year. It was
Yeah, I
going to
think
be
it's a
over
3-year.
3 years, and that was the thought process.
Right, and actually the first year is going on
now,
right
right?
now, and they're
Yeah.
taking care of it through the funds that they have because of the personnel changes.
So it would be
So-
for the next 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we just need clarity. Is that total cost? If not, then what's the training cost for the four officers? And then we'll know what it'll be for the 2 officers the following year, and it might go up a little bit, if any.
right. Well, I think like the big part of it is the wages, which obviously if there's a change in whatever cost increases or COLAs or that stuff, you could calculate that. They basically just had each officer, the part-time wages multiplied by 200 hours for each person. So I guess maybe the question then just comes down to is asking if they could put the next 2 fiscal years worth of this training into one article to come from the Public Safety Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. And what would that actual number be? And remove it from the operating budget.
I will make a note here, and I've got to text into Eric to find out, and then I will let you know.
Even though the fund requires a 2/3 vote, I really don't think that would be a problem.
I was going to say, I usually when you submit it and agree on everything, normally it hasn't been an issue, but.
We have to find something to fight about and see what happens.
Are correct, Julie. There's always something.
Well, and then sometimes it's not never. Sometimes it's one you don't even think is gonna be controversial, and just all of a sudden it is.
That is true too.
All right, does anyone else have anything for tonight?
No, do we need to do any kind of vote on that, or we want to wait until there's a a warrant article put together or something. I guess we wait for the warrant article, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
question is like, if anybody has any objections to that request?
I don't, I think
No.
Would we do the warrant article or would who
Uh,
would actually? do
That would be, I think, through the police would do the actual wording of
Okay.
that.
Okay.
All right, and if that's it, oh, Janet, you're muted.
Let me do it. Can I make a motion to adjourn?
I wish you would.
Oh, when she hits recording, sorry.